Great topic for you today. This is software user adoption best practices. So we got a great team of people here at Win in the Business Analyst group that are going to be joining us today. I'll give some introductions in a little bit, but my name is Ryan Helmeed. I'm here on the communications team here at Win. I specifically work on the RentalMan side. So that's my intro, I guess. But quick notes before we get started on the actual topic here and let our BA team handle some of the topics today. I just wanted to note that we want to make these interactive sessions, right? So if you guys have questions throughout, if you have, comments or ideas or anything like that, we want to hear about them throughout. So I'll be doing my best to watch I think you should have a chat button, a Q&A button, as well as a raise hand button. So I'll be monitoring that best I can, along with shifting some PowerPoint slides in here. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Send in some questions if you got them. We're more than happy to handle those throughout the webinar here. So again, we got a great topic for you today. I'm sure there's plenty of questions around this. We want this to be kind of an introduction to the topic itself. We'd like to expand on this later throughout the year as well. So with maybe another webinar at a certain point, as well as maybe a guide for you guys going here on out. So I think this is an introduction, some things to consider for software user adoption on your end as customers, not just for Win products or, RentalMan or Rental Result, but, these are things that you could consider as well for some of the other parts of your tech stack, or even just, business processes alone. If you're has a lot to do with change management. So we'll get into all that. But first, I wanted to send out a quick poll while I do some introductions to our team here. So let me get that started. Just like last time, we got about 3 questions that we'd love your guys' input on. So I'll send that and launch it right now. So real simple 3 questions, very introductory. It's not, or very general. It's not anything super detailed, but if you could, that'd be great to get some answers back on that, so we can get some, feedback on, what the team should talk about, and maybe shift the way they talk about things here as well. So go ahead and fill that out. But real quick, give some team introductions here. Today we have Ben Good with us. Ben's been here with us at Win for 20 years. He's been implementing and supporting the RentalMan suite, as well as its ancillary software solutions. He's done this numerous times throughout the UK, Europe, and North America. So he's a very experienced individual today. He's not so much going to be speaking today, but he definitely wanted to be here to answer questions from the group. So if you have any questions for Ben, please, again, throw them in the chat. So Ben, another note on him is prior to that, to his experience here at Win, he's worked in the rental industry for 10 years outside of Win. So he's got plenty of experience with a company called GE Energy Rentals. So lots of experience to talk on the topic here today. He's a great guy to have on the call today. Next, we have Carol Rivers. So Carol has been working with us for 17 years now here at Win. And again, she's been on the implementation team as well, focusing, and also has experience as a reporting specialist. So she's been here managing the BA team for 3 years now. Started her career actually working for a cat dealership before jumping into the software implementation business. So again, another person that's got great equipment rental, just equipment, cat experience there as well. So great to have her on. Next, we got Mike Waters. Mike has been with us for 26 years at Win. He's actually 18 years old when he joined the company. So tons of experience from Mike here. He's mainly, if you haven't met Mike or seen him before, I know this is a RentalMan webinar. He's actually on the rental result side. If you're not familiar with Result, it's actually, very similar to RentalMan in ways, but it's an equipment rental management software mainly for construction and crane companies. So again, very, very experienced. He's helped implement that and install Result with customers throughout the UK, Europe, North America, Middle East, and Australia. So almost every continent in the world except for Africa and it looks like Antarctica. So not tons of rental locations down in Antarctica, but he says he'd be happy to travel if somebody decides to start a rental location down there. Last but not least, we have Teresa with us today. So she has tons of experience as well in the equipment rental industry. So Teresa's been in the industry for about 25 plus years at this point. She's relatively new to Win though, but it's great to have her on. She's been here she's done 2 implementations of Win products as a customer, and then she's been working here at Win for about a year now. So that's our team. Again, tons of experience talking about software, tons of experience with software user adoption, training people, implementing software throughout our customer base here. So it's great to have them on. And I'll end this poll actually. So looks like we got some answers here, and just a quick summary for our presenters and for you guys there in the audience. It says, does your company currently track user adoption? Looks like there's a no or some no's there. Number 2 is, does your company have a person or team focused on user adoption? Looks like some no's there as well. And then number 3, have you ever dealt with resistance to a new technology in your company? So I think that's relatively yes answer around the board, not just for you guys, but here at Win even, and any business that's out there that's using any kind of technology. So it seems like a routine problem. We'll definitely talk about that today. So thank you for answering that poll. Thank you for joining. We'll get right into the agenda here. Slide change here. So on the agenda today, we have about 3 topics, and we'll get into a Q&A. We'll try to leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Number 1, we'll be talking about setting up for success. So we'll let Carol talk about that. What does it mean to set your business up successfully for proper user adoption in your business, right? And with different technology, maybe different business processes. She'll dive into that for us. Number 2 is overcoming resistance to change, right? So that's a huge topic when it comes to software user adoption. You're most likely always going to have somebody who's resisting that change, and that could be for a massive variety of reasons. So Michael's going to talk about that for a bit and dive into that topic. He's got some really good, interesting use cases, or not use cases, but just real life examples and stories that he's going to include there. So stay tuned for that. Number 3, we got go live is not the end, right? So you overcome that resistance with that initial first generation of users of this new technology that you brought into your business to help shape your business and grow your business and things like that. Just because that first generation of users is now using the system, that doesn't mean that the go live is completely at the end. So there's always, new coming into businesses. There's always new processes that you might want to include. So what does it take to continue that good streak of, good software user adoption throughout your business? That's going to be a huge, huge topic as well. So without further ado, I'll let Carol take it away here. She'll dive right into our topics.
Right. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. And as Ryan mentioned, if anyone has questions, if you have comments, stories of your own you want to share, don't feel you have to wait till the end for Q&A. Just jump right on in. I like participation from everyone. So this is just basically a short webinar, a starter webinar, so to speak, about user adoption, system user adoption in particular for this webinar, and why it's so important. I think everyone has a good idea of what user adoption is. Obviously, it is the rolling out of new products to your users, and then keeping track of, how are your users actually using that product. It doesn't have to be contained to just products. If you want to think about it in your business as a whole, it could be, when you're rolling out new services. It can even be when you're, rolling out new processes or want to change processes. It's always a good idea to try to, just track, what effect these are having on users, and are users endorsing them, so to speak, and wanting to, move forward with them. Obviously, when we're talking about something as far as a new product, there is a ton of investment that goes into getting a new product. It's not the new product itself, but also the time that it takes for people to go out there and research new products, and then you want to do comparison to your current product to the new products, and So there's a ton of, yes, money involved, but also time and resources. And I think every company across the board wants to have the most return on investment they can for their products. And if users aren't using your product, then pretty much that says, hey, this was a waste of time for us. Why did we even come down this route? And I have seen situations like that, where if people have planned things very well, if users are not on board, then they just don't want to use the product. They'll find other ways to get their jobs done, which means you as a company are basically losing money, and that is not what anybody wants to do. So again, more users you guys get into using these products, these processes, these new services that you're rolling out, the more you'll have a return on your investment. That kind of flows also into you want a good return on your investment, but you also want to reduce your costs by increasing business efficiency. And this can happen in several different ways. One of the things that jump to mind when I think about reducing cost is I went through an implementation where I had a customer and the company, they had about 19 locations go live. And the reason they were looking for a new product was because the majority of all of their locations were all on different softwares and using different systems. Some were even still using Excel spreadsheets. So there was absolutely no visibility whatsoever, location to location, about inventory. And they were all doing things slightly differently. So there were not even any common processes. And we always want to stay a competitive edge above all of our competitors. And by getting those streamlined processes, getting everyone on the same product can really help reduce those costs as well. So we want users to get in there, use the system, make sure you're getting a good return on your investment, but then also reduce costs by kind of streamlining everything. And that way, all the users know what their day in, day out job should be, and everyone knows that they're using the exact same product and they have visibility for that. So what do we do then if we want to set ourselves up for success? How do we get users to adopt these new products or processes or services that we are rolling out? One of the very first things we can do is don't wait until training to start planning. Some of the most successful implementations that I have been on, a lot of planning started years, when I would say years, very freely here, but months before a company will even start to buy the product, there's going to be some research. And the most successful implementations I have seen is when the company itself or the project team have gone out and said, hey, we need your help in picking or your ideas on picking these softwares or this product. So don't wait until you've purchased a product and suddenly you start training the end users, and then suddenly you're getting all this pushback about, what the users might not like about the software, or what's a hit and what's a miss with this new product. So I always encourage companies to start getting people on board, the sooner the better. The minute you start talking about wanting to look at new softwares, wanting a new product or new service, new process, start getting the end users, if you can, involved, start picking their brains, start asking their opinions about pain points that they might be having with their current system, or what is working well with their current system. If something's going very well, you don't necessarily want to just yank that away from them. So again, start looking at your end users, get their pain points, and then the sooner you get them involved, in my opinion, coming from a cat dealer, I actually went through an implementation from a customer's perspective, and it really helped get people on board with the new products because we got them involved sooner, the end users involved sooner. We asked them their opinions, and in that way they felt like they were involved in this. So again, don't wait until the very end of the project or implementation when you start training people to say, oh, here's the new product, have fun, this is what you're using going forward. Another thing that's really helpful is to get a champion for this. Somebody who understands where you're starting from and where you want to get to. So someone who knows that these are the goals of the company, this is where we're trying to get to, and why they ended up choosing a specific product. Again, this champion probably has reviewed a ton of different products, had tons of demos, but this champion should really be the one who will support the project. They will promote the new system, in other words, and really be able to communicate that out to end users. Also very important, in my opinion, is to have the SLTs or the senior leadership team backing this project or this product. There's a lot that senior leadership can do besides just saying, hey, you're going to use this new product, and there's no if, and, or buts about it. The senior leadership team can really help drive the strategy, but they can also get resources on board if they're needed. I think all of us, we have our regular jobs, and then we have an implementation that is suddenly happening. And most of the times we're working both. Whereas, if you have senior leadership team backing you, they can understand the constraints that you guys have, the resources. They have their regular jobs, and they can then help you guys get more resources on board. Less stress off of the users who are actually implementing this means, more chances are everyone can get on board and really enjoy the new product. Also, who are your subject matter experts? Another very good point here for a successful implementation and getting people on board are getting your SMEs. And by SMEs, I mean across all departments. One issue I have found is when you've got someone who hasn't worked that department, doesn't know the processes, doesn't know the end user's day in and day out job, and they're making the decisions on how the system can be configured, how the new processes should be. That is where I can see things start to derail. So get the SMEs involved, ask them how they currently use the system, and rely on them and trust their opinions that, they want the company to be just as successful, pretty much regardless of what the product is, but they need the product to work for them and how their business is doing and how the processes should be. So rely on them heavily for their input. Same thing with the informal leaders. Your informal leaders could be your users that are in there every single day. They know the system and the processes like the back of their hands. They may not be managers, but there's someone that you can really rely on to know how the system should work, how the processes should work for you. So get a good group and team together as early as you can. Having the SMEs, having the champion, and then having the backing of your leadership team. Another important one is transparency in your communication. I think all of us have been in a situation at least once in our lives where you hear rumors floating around. We're getting a new software, or we're changing our processes, and then the rumors just kind of build from there, and they get escalated and blown out of proportion. I say communicate out as early and as soon as you can about one, why you want to leave a legacy system, what your hopes are in the new product, what you think the new product is going to bring to the table, and start talking about those sooner than later so that people can start kind of, accepting those in their mind, so to speak, and come to terms with things. No one likes last minute shock changes to how their jobs are going to be performed or what they should be doing in their jobs. So that is very important to have. Finally, as far as how and why we could to be successful is obviously we want to track user adoption. So how do we want to track user adoption? From a wins perspective, if you can see on the PowerPoint, there's a dashboard that we use quite often for all of our implementations where we track users who are getting into the system and what transactions they're doing. This is a very simple but effective way to be able to track user adoption. We've got one where it runs for the last 7 days, and then we've got one that does the whole lifetime. So obviously, you can kind of see here out of our demo system, there are peaks when people are in the demo system, and then there are lows where people are not in the demo system. So again, very easily we can create reports to track user adoption. Some other tangible goals, obviously you want them to be able to be tangible so you can meet them, so you can track them. But besides, seeing just the exact number of transactions that users are doing, you can also, look at, for instance, set a goal that we're going to increase our revenue so much over the next year, or we're going to cut costs over the next year, or maybe tracking service desk tickets is a way. Say maybe we don't, our new product is more stable. We don't need to log service desk tickets. So there are other mechanisms and metrics that we can use to actually track that users are adopting these. Again, the more communication, the more users you have up front who can set, out the new processes, the new system configuration, the more likely you are to have a successful implementation. That being said, there are times when all of us are going to run into some sort of resistance, some way that someone is digging their heels, into the ground and they do not want to change. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Waters, and he is going to kind of go through how you're going to overcome some of this resistance.
Thanks, Carol. So we have kind of 6 talking points really for overcoming resistance. And all of them really kind of come down to communication. But to bounce through it quickly, one of the first things you can do to help users on board with the new systems, the new processes, is to really set reasonable timelines for how you're going to roll out and do the implementation. So as Carol said, people have their day jobs. They need to keep equipment going out the door. They need to keep money coming into the business. They need to chase customers. And implementing a new system or an ancillary product or a new process can be a distraction to that day job, or essentially more work for them on top of their day job. And by keeping the timelines reasonable, you kind of reduce the initial sticker shock, the terror that the first experience of a lot of the users feel when they see they're going to have to be involved in this. Now, in terms of setting reasonable timelines, the deadlines vary from what you're implementing. Some full system implementations take longer than implementing an ancillary product. But you always need to be careful not to do it too quickly. You don't want to try and force it through, rush the users, make poor decisions, and give them space to do it. Equally, if you set your deadlines too far out, give people months, years, decades to overcome things, the deadline just goes out forever and nobody gets anything done. So you do need to strike a careful balance between moving too quickly and letting things drift on, never happening and never really getting the momentum behind the implementation and the sense of purpose into your end users and your project teams. The other thing that you can do really to help overcome resistance is take feedback from your users and your project team seriously. So you can listen to them and see what they come back with. Now, this doesn't mean implementing every one of their suggestions. So users quite often will come back and say, I absolutely have to have this report. And when you drill down on it, you ask why, and they say, well, it always got sent to my inbox from the old system, and I never read it. So they don't really need it, but you kind of need to walk them through that process of understanding that they don't need it. Equally, they might say, I want this button moving from the top right of the screen to the bottom left. You don't have to do that. but at least listen to them and take on board their feedback and respond to it to try and quell their fears and get them on board and working with you towards the end goal. Kind of an example of this, I worked with a customer in the UK back in 2022, where we're implementing rental result to help them control their equipment going out in a very, very regulated industry. So all their equipment was operated by a user, and that user absolutely had to be qualified to drive it. And part of our project was going to be recording the operator qualifications so that you knew who you could allocate to which piece of equipment. And their senior management were massively on board with this. But the mid-tier management that did the allocation on a daily basis were very against it and kept raising objections to rental result and how it worked. And the more we drilled down into it, we kind of realised that they had a broad spectrum of a broad scope of activity that they could perform, and that scope was going to be limited. And the management wanted that scope limited to comply with regulations to make sure things were safe. But the users did not like it and had to be walked through to understand that we had a goal with implementing the system. The management team had a goal of improving compliance, and that the freedoms they had to allocate everybody previously were just not compatible with that goal. So, yes, they took the users' feedback seriously, but had to respond to that and walk their users through to understand that there was a goal at the end of this that they were trying to achieve, and that meant a change in process for them. And that kind of leads us on to the next bullet point, really, that people often raise issues and don't use the software, not through an actual issue with the software, but for a fear for their job. Is the software going to put them out of work? Are they just scared of the technology? Are they not people that naturally use technology? Are they not people that use it? With the technology fears, we can kind of overcome those and get users more comfortable simply by offering them more training, working through them, a bit more hand-holding and moving them along. With the job fears, it becomes a lot harder. People are worried, what's going to happen to my work? Where am I going to sit? And this kind of ties into quite often, we see people will implement a system alongside a major change in their business. So 2 recent projects I've worked on have been, again, a UK company combining 2 divisions, one already using a Win product, one using a completely different product, and the division being brought in were being merged into the division using the Win product, and we got a lot of resistance to how the Win product worked and a lot of feedback, and they didn't like using it. But when we drilled down and talked to the users and worked with them, we found a lot of their questions were not, I don't like the product, but actually, how do I fit into the new role? How do I fit into the new organisation? I used to be able to always raise blanket purchase orders for thousands of dollars. Why can I not do that with the new system? And that is really, when you're looking at adoption, you need to look at things outside of the actual product that might be stopping adoption, like changes in process, changes in hierarchy, changes in your organisation that cause people fears. And really, they want the safety blanket of what was old, the safety blanket of what they know. They want to escape from the change, and you can become too blinded by technology without looking at the wider changes going on in the organisation. Equally, Carol mentioned your informal leaders in the business earlier. So on another project I worked on in the Middle East in 2018, when we arrived on site to start training with the system, we found when we asked the users, what is your old system? They pointed at a chap in the corner and said, it's him. And they had a very limited number of very high value assets. And this guy kept in his head, this crane's gone to this person, this crane's gone to that person. He knew where they were. And it gave him a lot of power in the organisation, which meant he didn't want to engage with the system. He didn't want to join in the training. He didn't want to share his knowledge of processes because he was scared of losing his position, his power within the organisation, and because all the more junior people looked up to him because he'd been there for years, they looked to him to take his lead. Do we like this system? Do we not like this system? Well, he didn't like it, so they didn't like it. And there was a lot of work had to be gone in to make him understand that he still had a role in the organisation, but the organisation was growing and changing, and it simply wasn't practical for him to be holding everything in his head anymore. So there's a lot of work needs to go into assuaging people's fears and actually making them understand their place in the new world with the new technology. Now, having said all this, sometimes you are rolling out your processes, you're rolling out your training, you're trying to implement the system, and you're getting resistance. And this can come down to essentially the Mike Tyson quote, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So you have planned for years on paper, you understand what you want to do, but actually, when it meets the real world, there are certain quirks, certain idiosyncrasies that really kind of derail that plan that you need to work around and perhaps reassess your processes and the training and your plans for rolling out so that you can keep things working on track and working for the users. And if you try and steamroller through and push, and just get your new process in there, you might be alienating your users and forcing them to not adopt the system. You do need to, when appropriate, take a step back and say, why am I getting the resistance? Do I actually need to change something in the process I'm implementing, a change request software, or in the way I'm training people? So being flexible can sometimes help you get that adoption, win people over and get them on board. Your next option is to really remember your goals, your whys. Why were you doing this? So sometimes it's good to be flexible, but sometimes your whys are very definite and very, very key. And you need to communicate those whys and actually not change your processes, not change your training, because the new process is in for a very good reason, and kind of reiterate those whys and get people on board and try and win them over to the why, help them see the benefits. Yes, this is scary. Yes, you might not be able to do this anymore, but actually now your role will encompass this new and exciting thing that you'll be able to spend more time on because we've freed up time with the new system. Sometimes remembering the whys can make you take quite strong actions and go from the carrot, this is the benefit you'll get from the new system, to more of a stick position. So an example of this, again, would be a customer we worked with and went live in 2022, where they were finding one of their biggest bugbears, one of their biggest problems was the cost of delivery. And the cost of delivery was getting expensive because people forgot to order everything to deliver to the job site at the first time. So they sent a truck out on Monday to deliver to a job site, and the truck went back Tuesday, the next day, to deliver the rest of the equipment the job site had forgotten on Monday, doubling their delivery cost. And their big why, their big metric smart goal for implementing the system was to reduce these delivery costs. And they spent a lot of time making sure the web portal that comes with one of our rental result products was configured to make sure the user was given the list and couldn't decline things from the list that they absolutely needed. So they had to put them in the basket, they had to order them. So remembering this why, and remembering that they needed to get people on board, they went with a very simple option. They turned their phones off. No longer could people ring their central service desk to order things on the phone and have to type it into the system. They had to go through the web portal, which forced them down a channel which made sure they were hitting the goals that they defined. Finally, in overcoming resistance, take advantage of your vendor resources. People like my colleagues Ben, Carol, Teresa on the call, we do as our day job implementing systems. We know how to win people over. We have documentation that we can provide. We can do presentations. All your vendors, if you're working with a vendor of any software, should have people like that can help you and have experience in this, that do it day in, day out, and come in and help run webinars, training sessions, provide documentation, demo the system, get people on board and really help build the enthusiasm. And equally, if there are problems to be solved, they should have people that can help solve problems, make configuration changes, design processes that can help you out. So always remember your vendor should be there to work with you as a partner and help you overcome these issues, and really have resources that you can work with to help out in this kind of area. Having overcome all this resistance, you're going to go live with the product. You're going to roll something like RentalMan, Rental Result out to your end users. And maybe going to go live because of your initial realistic timelines and other constraints with some modules of that system. You might be processing contracts through there, producing your invoices through that system, but running the AR and the AP through the new system. But that's not everything that system's capable of, and you want to get more users adopting. So user adoption can have a broader idea of getting more users into this ecosystem from other parts of the business. So maybe you want to pull in people to use the workshop module. So having got your basic operations, your dispatching, your on-renting into the system, you want to come in and start pulling in people from the workshop to do workshop and servicing in there and get them adopting the system and getting more benefits, increasing the benefits from the system. And really, the way to do that is to move on to the second and third phases of rollout as soon as possible, build on the momentum of go live. Your order entry users have had a good go live. They're positive about the system. They can build on that momentum, talk to the people in the workshop. Oh, yeah, you want to be on this system. It's great. It saved me 3 hours a day in my day job. And you can build on that. Really, to do this, as Carol's mentioned, you have a dedicated champion within your business who's promoting this software, who's saying, we bought RentalMan, we bought Rental Result, we bought Salesforce, if you're using Salesforce in another part of the business for this reason. And it can also do this. You have that dedicated champion who's pushing it within the business and knowing what the product's capable of and what other areas you can expand to. Generally, that person is probably quite ambitious, quite career-minded, wants to move up in the organisation, and will potentially move on from their role, maybe even move, unfortunately, to another organisation. So you need to make sure that they are transferring knowledge, producing documentation, knowledge bases, information to share within your organisation about why processes were designed in a particular way, why settings were made, why decisions were made in the go-live, that the root driver in your business that caused you to go down that road, so people understand and can keep understanding later when that person's gone and things have moved on. So, as well as knowledge transfer, having your champion, and the other thing to do that is good in this area is to stay engaged with your vendor. So the vendor will have resources like monthly webinars, solution summits, CSMs that can work with you, BAs that can help work through problems, help keep you informed of new products that are coming that can solve problems in your business, help you keep going with the thing and really maintain the usage of that product throughout time. So staying engaged with them so you know new features that are coming, attending webinars, that's all a great way to help keep your current users engaged so that you don't see a drop-off even if after you've had an initial good adoption. And finally, probably one of the things to do is remember, it's not set in stone. You may have made decisions and set the system up 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago when you first bought it, but actually your business has changed, your business has moved along, and you can adapt settings, adapt flows within the product to suit your new business. Don't think because the product works this way now and has always worked this way, it has to work this way. You can come in and you can make changes, make alterations to your process flows and things like that, just to keep in touch with your current needs as a business. So it's always good to review and move along and keep up to date to make sure the system is still delivering what you need it to deliver day in, day out. And again, that's a good reason to stay engaged with your vendor and keep up to date on new functions, new features, things going forward. So I'm hoping that made a lot of sense and there was some good information in there for you all. We are about 5 minutes left, I think, as Ryan, my timekeeper, will tell me. So if we want to throw it open for Q&A, myself, Carol, Ben, Teresa would welcome any questions.
Yeah, great, guys. So something that came up is it looks like metrics, right? So I was wondering if any of you could speak to maybe some general metric, or have you seen in the rental industry metrics that people are tracking to better get a gauge on what user adoption is looking like? Anybody could speak to that? Are there specific metrics or KPIs you guys are looking for or have seen a lot of people in the industry using?
Certainly, I've seen one of our customers build reports to track when they rolled out mobile apps, so not rolling out the original core ERP system, but when they rolled out mobile apps, they actually had a flag on each transaction. So they could report out, was this transaction created through a mobile app or was it created through the core system? Which gave them a chance to see, are the people in the branches actually using the off-rent mobile app, or are they still coming back and using their keyboard? I think we've kind of seen that with both RentalMan and Rental Result customers making that kind of tracking of which app was being used.
Okay.
And then even where Mike was talking about the customer who was have the high delivery costs because they kept having repeat deliveries, even that's reportable. That was one of their keys for Go Live, was they created a dashboard and some reporting just around that, so they could sit there and monitor, was it dropping off or were they still having the issues? So not necessarily a end user adoption, so to speak, but it is more of a process adoption. And how, so we just use reporting to pull the data out and we could track, where we're having repeat deliveries in a certain time frame for any kind of customers.
I was going to add that there's also metrics around sheer numbers of documents that are created in the system by location and user, especially during implementation between CRP or after training and CRP. We can track just sheer numbers of documents in the system to see how much the system is being used and by.
I see we've got a question from Kyle as well.
Yep. Yeah, so as it relates to user adoption, have you found any differences between small and large businesses? So is there anything that would change for a company?
And this may be from my perspective. My perspective has been, and then each one is slightly different, obviously, but my perspective is sometimes it is the smaller businesses that have the hardest time. And I think it's a number of different issues. One is smaller companies don't have the resources. So again, the people who are doing the implementations are also doing their day job. Got it, Matt. So basically, for the smaller businesses, they have fewer resources. So it's typically people doing their regular job, and then when they can, they also have to work on this implementation. And so there is a little bit of pushback there. And then the smaller companies, like Mike mentioned, you have the one guy who had all the knowledge in his head, and that typically is the way it is with smaller companies. You've got that one person, they've been there for 20 years, they've done absolutely everything, and they do not want to let go. Not to say that we still don't get pushback from the bigger ones, but I think the bigger businesses have a little bit more flexibility, more support. And, there always hasn't been that one person doing everything. So I don't think, they feel as threatened as job-wise. I don't know, Mike, Teresa, Ben, if you've got maybe a different opinion than I do.
Not a different opinion, but one of the things I do notice is sometimes you have a company that is small and growing, and their why can quite often be, we're going to become a big company, we need a system. And that's it. They've not thought in any more detail of why they're going to rip apart all their processes, make big changes. They just feel like big companies have a system, so they should. and they've not fully thought it through, which kind of comes back to your setup for success section, Carol, that they've not come up with those whys and those points at the start. They've just thought, big companies have a system, we should do too, and not really gone down into that detail and thinking and planning at the beginning.
Not to say there's anything wrong with that, because we do want customers to grow. But
it's not the growing that's the problem. It's the thinking of your whys and the planning and the setting up for success in the first place.
All right, looks like we got a thank you from Matt, and we're up on time too, so I don't want to go over too much, but thank you all for joining the webinar today. I hope that this was really helpful.